Building a community can be tough work. For nonprofits, community organizations, charities, and unions, there are a lot of details that need to be tracked and communicated. Today, we're going to talk with a company that helps them out and find out what drives this company. Today, I have with me Stacey Yudin, CEO of NEP Services. They are leading a new era of digital transformation for nonprofits, and they were recently named Fast Company's 8th most innovative company of 2024. They provide communication solutions for nonprofit organizations, including an array of markets such as unions, education, essential services, regional nonprofits, and firefighters. And to date, the company has helped its clients raise $65 million for their communities and $7 million with its Help a Hero crowdfunding platform that raises money for community heroes in need. So let's talk with Stacey about how it all came together. Welcome, Stacey.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I'm excited to have you. This is important stuff, I think, that sounds like you guys are doing here. So I want to get the details. And anybody who's looking for, help in building one of these communities, this is going to be a very relevant conversation. But before we get into all that, I know that you've got kind of a background in charitable organizations and that sort of thing. Could you just tell me a little bit about what brought you to NEP Services? Like, what were the kinds of things that made you excited about NEP Services?
I joined NEP Services about a decade ago. And since then, we've been building probably one of the most innovative platforms that help nonprofits easily on-ramp and create a digital future. So what that means is everything from operational efficiency to fundraising and strategic marketing. And really in the space of, there's a lot of technical tools out there, and there's really no one cohesive strategy. So NEP Services caught my eye in the sense that they were already doing this strategic work on digital marketing. So how could we expand that and, really reduce the burden for nonprofits to implement cutting edge technology to help run their union, help run their nonprofit more efficiently. And as a businesswoman, that efficiency, that dynamic operational efficiency really caught my eye. So that was really, I fell in love with the business aspect of nonprofits, and it's really the perfect marriage at NEP.
From what I've seen of nonprofits that I've been involved with, they do use a hodgepodge of solutions, and oftentimes with nonprofits, there's not a lot of money to go around necessarily either. So, there's an interesting, when you say business dynamic to it, there's an interesting business dynamic to non-for-profits that sort of drive different kinds of requirements, right?
One of the things that attracted me, obviously, to working with nonprofits is that, I'm a community-led individual. I've been raised on giving back, having an impact, as cheesy as it sounds, making the world a better place. And so the intersection of operational efficiency and business KPIs and the nonprofit world, how I can give back, how I can make leaders amplify their impact and their time. For me, that was, the ultimate kind of world that I wanted to live in. And the technology aspect, it gives her so much opportunity to really streamline the tools that nonprofits use and to really start to think about technology with a strategic eye, measuring KPIs, measuring delivery, measuring impact, segmenting your audience, whatever that might be. So all of those business initiatives are now really in the tech revolution, right? The industrial 4.0. Right. All of those KPIs and all of those goals are now being wrapped around the nonprofit sector. So it's a very exciting time to not only lead a nonprofit, but to work alongside these change makers.
I got to imagine you're working with people who are, passionate about their mission and passionate about their community or passionate about their organization, but perhaps not so versed in a lot of technology and perhaps more sophisticated business techniques that would help them, sort of visualize what's happening as much as well, right?
Yeah, and that is again one of the biggest business challenges that we deal with every day at NEP. So, how do we make the technology accessible? How do we make sure the client training and service model is one that nonprofits at every budget size can take a part of? And so, I think where we stand out in our point of differentiation in the marketplace is that we're not just a tech company where, hey, here's your SaaS model, here's your traditional tech. Download your app and you're on your own. We really have
Right.
created a customer success model that enables and supports nonprofits through this journey to adopting technology, right? Adopting it, using it, engaging with their audience, and then, reporting on their success. And so these are traditional relationships that you see in a marketing company where they're helping you through the entire marketing life cycle from design to support, and then, obviously the acquisition of donors or members. Our technology model really follows that traditional relationship based support system, which is a cool and a very interesting hybrid. And I think a lot of our success and retention of clients and nonprofits has been from and is due to that customer success model. So we're very proud of that, and we're constantly innovating on how to do that and grow at the same time, and how to make sure all clients get the attention that they need to be successful.
That sounds like it would really be valuable to these organizations. I do want to touch on, one of the things that we've been hearing a lot lately is, I guess it's an election year, so this always comes up in election years, but sort of like the rise and the importance of unions in this day and age, right? Could you speak to, I know, you do a lot with firefighter unions and things like that. Could you talk about how, what is the importance of these unions? Because I think that's one of the things, I'm from Chicago, so we had the Haymarket riots, and, we have a big tradition in sort of the value of unions, and how they created the 5-day work week and, 40-hour work week and things like that. Made some really important strides, but, sort of fell out of favor over, the last 20, 30 years, I would say. Could you speak to how this growing movement, impacting what you're doing and how you're helping with that?
Yeah, absolutely. The labor movement is really has deep roots in the American independence movement, and actually started in the Industrial Revolution in Europe. So the
Yeah.
labor movement is a fabric that has been behind workers' rights in pretty much every modern day benefit that you and I enjoy, whether we work for a private company like NEP or work for a government. Everything from the weekend.
Mhm.
You can think every day that you have off, every Saturday and Sunday, the weekend was gained from the hard fought battles of the labor movement, from unions, from trade workers. And that established.
I like weekends.
I love weekends. Who doesn't love the weekend and
Yes.
weekends?
I could use another day for it too. Could we work on that?
You know what? You never know what the future may hold.
Never know. We were promised a 4-day work week a long time ago. So,
Oh, there's
yeah.
been books on the 4-day work week, but I don't have those statistics ready.
Yeah.
But all the benefits that we enjoy, the weekend. I mean, the end of child labor. I mean, I don't think there's
Yeah.
anyone in modern times who think children should be working in a factory instead of going to school. So, it was in the earliest 20th
We are
century.
seeing the rise of lowering the age limit though for children to work now too. So we have seen sort of backtracking on some of these things that unions have delivered for us. So I think that's why we're seeing this trend.
Yeah, and the surge in the conversation around unions and the labor movement recently is, I think, a direct result because we're starting to slide backwards on a lot of the benefits that have been won over the last 100 years. The statistics are very, very clear that as the union membership decreases, so does the middle class. And so the middle
Mm.
class is really what drives the economy. So I always make the argument that in a capitalistic economy, the labor movement is a good counterbalance to the growth and the sustainability of the middle class, right? If we can
Right.
help rise up our middle class, they have more discretionary income, they can buy homes, they can, have credit cards, go on vacations. those dollars that they make, they actually spend and reinvest into the corporations and their local communities. So it's a symbiotic relationship. I think that's essentially incredibly necessary to maintaining
Yeah.
and growing a successful, economy. And so I always use that argument at dinner parties when this topic comes up. Because there's, if you look at the statistics, they're absolutely union wages and union membership is tied in with the success of the middle class. And there's, no way really to argue around that.
I was a political science major, so I had a professor who always said that you can't have a democracy without a middle class. When you have extreme wealth polarization, countries fail on those kinds of conditions. So it's not just as necessarily a good economic sense, but it is potentially an existential sort of issue for a country.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the economic success and the thriving communities that invest back into their workers, the people that are every day doing labor and service jobs, over time, those communities are stronger, more resilient. They see all of the other fruits of that labor, literally and physically, within that community. And so you see the strength of those communities and the labor movement really go hand in hand.
Well, so tell me, like, what kind of challenges, do unions and some of the not-for-profits, like what are like challenges that are sort of specific to these kinds of organizations?
It's funny. We talk about nonprofits like they're their own strange enigma, and they're so different. But one of the things I continually say when I meet with leaders is that you need to run your nonprofit like you do a business. So you need to think about strategically aligning your tools. You need to think about what your strategy is. You need to think about operational efficiency. You're setting up a business. Just at the end of the day, your nonprofit gives all of their revenue, all of their profit back to the community. So you need to measure your impact. So that's really step one, is to say, okay, I'm a change maker. I want to make the world a better place. But that doesn't mean that you can run a successful organization with all volunteers. You need to think about investing into your infrastructure, the people that are on your staff that run, because it's the humans that make the impact. And so sometimes growing your infrastructure, whether you're adding on a full-time employee, yes, technically you're giving less dollars back to the community, but really the dollars are not the full picture. How are we measuring the impact of the programs that you're rolling out, right? Results oriented. And so one of the challenges is, okay, what tools do I put in place for my nonprofit, for my labor union, to make sure that I can report and measure on my impact? So, one of the major challenges right off the bat is obviously tech, which every business has an issue. Like, we need to have more tech in our business. We all know that. Unions and nonprofits are trying to figure out how to do that as well, right? So data, it comes down to database. It comes down to your audience. How are you measuring your donors? How are you tracking your donors? How are you tracking your members? How are you communicating with your membership of your labor union? But again, it really comes down to the same set of problems that businesses had. What type of tools do we select? And how do we make sure that we're making our spend and our choices about how we use our budget as efficient as possible?
Yeah, and I would mention too that in a lot of these organizations, I imagine people are working for free as volunteers too. So you want to be respectful of how you use all of your resources, right? And you're using donor money too.
Yes. And then from a business challenge, right? Working for nonprofits, it's how do we create a product on our Connect Plus membership engagement and communication platform is in its third generation. And that has been our biggest challenge. How do we create a software product, a SaaS product that is really flexible so that nonprofits at all size can really implement it, and it's cost effective for their size of their organization. And it's not a budget breaker, and they're still getting the majority of the funds back out to the community. They're investing in the programs and the schools or whoever they may be helping. So that's a business challenge we have.
Yeah, I mean, that's another constituency is education too, right? So tell me, I would imagine, like if I were starting a not-for-profit, I would be like, oh God, I don't have much money to work with here. Like you mentioned several times that you kind of scale between very small organizations and very large organizations. I mean, like, how affordable is it to get into this? And, how can some organization that doesn't have a lot of money or skill, get in on this?
Yeah, great question. And we do have a variety of clients. I think our smallest client has a range of like six seats, 6 members, and some of our larger clients have hundreds of thousands of members in their organization. So,
Mhm.
I mean, we've been able to scale our Connect Plus membership engagement and communication platform down to $99 a month, all the way up to, a custom enterprise level. And we're very
Right.
proud of that. And there's a lot of features within our system. You can add a website, you can do online petitions, you can do digital voting, a lot of tools that not all unions need. So you can add them on. You can pick and choose. You can turn them on for 6 months in a shorter term, or they can be sort of baked into your software from day one. And so our system and our customer success team really helps you engineer that and makes it really simple to adopt. Right. That's one of the keys. It needs to be simple to adopt for you as a
Yeah.
leader, and it needs to be simple to adopt for your members.
Tell me, like, what it all looks like. Like, if somebody comes to you and says, "I want to get on the platform," like, what all is it that you provide, and what are all the pieces that go into it?
Really, it's about membership engagement. It's about branding your organization in the community and to your members. And so it's everything from, engaging website to help you convert more potential donors to recurring donors, to a
Mhm.
payment app where we can help you process the payments for those donors or those membership dues, all the way to back office software. So imagine being able to run your nonprofit in the cloud. Everything from document storage, communication systems, text, email, integrated two-way chat. We can help you kind of reduce your technology spend by eliminating all these third party hodgepodge array of tools into one seamless back office system. So
Mm.
it's very impactful when you think about I can go to one place as a leader, I can see
Right.
all my documents, all my members, I can run membership reports, I can send a text message to my executive board, all in one place on the go from my mobile device. And
Yeah.
I think it's that ease of use, and that really amplifies the impact you can make as a leader. Because as a union leader, you've got lots of other stuff to do than worry about your tech and your
Yeah.
software and your IT
And you're
infrastructure.
taking care of
That
all that infrastructure and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. We handle all that. We're really that strategic partner for you when it comes to building and maintaining your organizational software.
The organizations that you're talking about have a lot of, like, regulatory and compliance challenges, as well as, like, in particular, taxation challenges. And I would imagine, there's all sorts of regulations around, meetings and communications and recording certain things. Is that all kind of built into it?
One of the areas I think we're the strongest is that we really listen to customers. So
Mm.
this journey over the past 10 years, I've really made it a point that we're customer obsessive. We listen. So the building of our software and the improvement of our software and adding new features has really been a focus and driven from the customers. So our customers came to us and said, "Hey, we have a bylaw change. We have a
Mm.
new we have a new compliance request, and we need to record our meetings. We need to make sure our meetings are documented. We need to make sure meetings are sent to all 15,000 of our members, and we need a system to prove that we did give them an opportunity to join our board of directors meeting and our
Right.
general membership meeting." So yes, all of these things and nuances of running your labor union, running your nonprofit have been baked into the software over the last decade. And that's really thanks to our customers. They've driven the innovation of the Connect Plus platform. They've driven the innovation of communitypetition.com. They've driven the improvement of Help a Hero, our crowdfunding platform, which we're very proud of.
Could you talk a little bit about Help a Hero?
Yeah. Again, you mentioned it earlier. One of the biggest challenges is the funding challenge for nonprofits. So it's kind of the cart before the ox sometimes. They know they need all these technical tools. They know they need an email marketing system. They know they need a database to track their members, but they sometimes don't have the funding.
Right.
So our different membership and payment apps like our crowdfunding platform, Help a Hero, you can spin up a campaign to fund a cause. So if you're able to raise more dollars efficiently for your nonprofit through Help a Hero, that allows your current budget to be used in other areas. And so we've helped create these funding tools, helpahero.com, our membership app payments tool, that again make it easy for our organizations to really secure and grow their donations and their budget.
Could you talk a little bit about like who Help a Hero has benefited?
It's a fully automated SaaS platform, so anyone can go to helpahero.com and spin up their own crowdfunding. What's great is that, we don't share the donor data or any of the data that flows through the platform. So truly your audience of donors are your audience of donors.
Mhm.
They're not reshared with any third-party marketing companies. So, when you get a call from the spam telemarketer, that's not going to be because of that data set. We
Right.
keep that proprietary to your organization. So it helps you grow your impact. I mean, we've had police officers, firefighters, labor organizations, individuals in the community that need help because they've lost their jobs. There's been a variety of examples where individuals have been able to just spin up a crowdfunding page and really be able to connect with their donors and
Help people who
get
are
the help that
injured
they need.
on the job, things
Yeah,
like that. Yeah.
exactly. Injured on the job, work of life, hardship requests. You'll see that across the platform.
Obviously, you've worked with a lot of different people. You've helped raise a lot of money for a lot of organizations, but even beyond the raising the money, you've built the infrastructure for a lot of organizations. Can you talk about like some of the success stories that you've had? Some organizations that you've worked with that just like it really impacted their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a recent example that comes to mind. It's an electrical workers union, and they were struggling to keep union jobs, and the state budget was going to take away about 8,000 jobs, not for any other reason than some, backdoor politics. And
Hmm.
they needed someone to help them deliver a message to the community members and to their actual membership. And so we came in about 3 days. We sent 55,000 emails to legislators that were driven from commentary of their local organizational members, as well as people in the community, said, look, we need to invest in our local union. We need to invest in the labor jobs. We can't keep the infrastructure of this community going without these individuals. So in about 3 days, we were able to really turn the tide of that PR, and really communicate effectively to legislators how important those individuals are to the infrastructure of the greater Syracuse area. And I think that's just one of hundreds of examples my team works on every year, of how we're helping amplify the message of these organizations,
Yeah.
helping nonprofits raise more funds. We have a police organization that we work with outside of California, and they've had officers that have been injured, severely injured in the line of duty. And we helped raise close to $1.5 million for those officers to help cover, rehabilitation that's not
Right.
covered in their insurance. So home retrofitting.
Right.
A lot of these additional expenses, the family is burdened with that. And so we were helped to kind of fill that gap to make sure that each one of these families was able to make the necessary retrofitting requirements to their homes for
Yeah.
wheelchair and accessible access. So really, very impactful
Yeah,
examples
for
that
sure.
sort of make us all clam up sometimes.
So one of the things that you were kind of hinting at in there was that and I know a lot of the challenge for not-for-profits, unions, things like that, is communication. They're not always great at marketing, communicating, but it sounds like you've also got things in there that like help with even sort of like lobbying efforts as well. I mean, does it get that granular?
Yeah, it does. And what's interesting about that aspect is that when I first joined the company, I was really focused on the engagement and communication model for nonprofits to their community,
Right.
right? So it was this nonprofit one directional to the community.
Ah,
And over time, working with nonprofits and learning about the true kind of 360-degree service model, there was an opportunity in the marketplace to engage the community to communicate back to the nonprofit. So over the years, we've built a community petition and legislative tool because
Interesting.
certain times of the year, it's really important to help elevate their concerns to legislators. And they represent, at sometimes, hundreds of thousands of members. They have hundreds of thousands of individuals in their labor union. They're an important voice in politics. And so what's great is that you can add on these different features, and ultimately, you have your one virtual union office where you can create a petition, create a campaign on Meta, create something, a viral, something on Instagram, and you can drop it into our communication platform, Connect Plus. And in one click of a button, you can strategically communicate by text, email, chat, news, push notification, and really amplify getting the message out. So you're not just stuck with, my only communication channel is social.
Yeah.
You now control the branding and the communication channel outside of social media. You're not relying on that algorithm to hopefully reach your members and your followers. You can create your own audience and then control that delivery. And so I think that's been one of the more successful evolutions of the product.
Yeah.
Is that it can pivot based on what the nonprofit needs. Is it charitable? Great. Is it legislative? Is it community-based, just, tips and tricks? Is it public safety prevention?
Right.
It's dynamic in that way.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I mean, like the more you dig into this, the more you can see how the needs of these organizations are very different than a lot of other companies. I mean, obviously there's a lot of similarities too, but there's a lot of unique features that they need that, like is not typical. And it sounds like, considering you go from $99 to, huge enterprise plans, that seems like a lot of value in a one package.
Yeah, that was our goal. It was to be as strategic with the nonprofit's budget as possible. We know that when you start off, a lot of times you have no dollars in your nonprofit budget. At the same time, how do we come in and make an impact for an international organization where, their problem is not the funding side, it's the fact that they have 347,000 members, and really it's a data management issue. So how do we have a scalable and flexible platform, which we've done with Connect Plus, that it's really a data management tool, whether the audience is membership data management or donor data management. It comes down to, you need to know who your audience is, and you need to be able to strategically communicate with them. And you can't do that if the data is all over the place in 7 different tools.
Right.
So it's really been reverse.
You're managing a lot of spreadsheets at that point.
Yeah, exactly. So it's spreadsheet on spreadsheet, and this group of members lives in this area, and this group of members has this job type, journeyman, inside, outside electrical workers. All of those nuances in the data require different communication journeys.
Yeah.
And you should have a different branding and communication strategy for different segments of your audience. And so we've been reverse engineering almost. I've been thinking about, how do I sit in the leadership seat as a nonprofit leader? How do we reverse engineer this? And I think that's what we've done really well over the last decade.
Yeah. What's next for NEP? Like, where do you go from here? Like, what are the things that you've got on your radar?
I'm a tech enthusiast, and I think you are too. And I happen to be in this, space of union and nonprofit management. And so we're spending a lot of time and paying close attention to the impacts of AI and usability for our marketplace. And so thankfully, we have a really incredible R&D team that is very client obsessive, that listens to clients. They join conference calls all the time with leaders across the country, and are analyzing and assessing, where does AI play a role? How do we create more operational efficiency? How do we create more impact and more value within our platform, but also ultimately for the goals of the nonprofit or labor organization? So for me, that's the most exciting kind of future that's before us. And, I'm someone that I'm an early adopter of everything. And our clients are not. So I feel like that's our role also around thought leadership is we jump in and we early adopt this tech, digest it, and and build it into solutions that work for our labor unions and nonprofits.
Well, and I think it's great that you're sort of eating your own dog food on the AI front there too, because the other thing about AI is not just this transformative nature of work, but it's like it's going to have a big impact on labor too. So when you're talking about protecting workers' rights and things like that, I mean, this is a big transformational moment.
It affects just not only the internal operations of a union, but as you pointed out, the effect on the workers and how does that look? And I think the conversations that are happening and what I see happening in the marketplace is that there's some really positive conversations around how can AI be used within the labor space. And so some organizations like the IBW, International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, they really have adopted technology really well. And they have an entire segment of electrical workers who, they're engineers, they're actually coders, they're developers. And so they've embraced the idea of technology into their union and made a space and a place for that as part of their strategic plan. And I think one of the things that I've learned on my journey working with labor unions in particular is the amount of training that they do for union members. And so when we think about workers' education and retraining American workers, labor unions, I think, play an essential, if not pivotal role in helping educate and set up these training programs. They already have incredible training programs for the trades unions.
Yeah.
And they are already incorporating the technology aspect into those. And I think that's kind of an aspect that's really not touched on very often.
Well, and that's going to be hugely important because, I mean, the one thing that we can be certain of is that the labor market, jobs in general, are going to be changing very rapidly now. And like that continuing education and sort of strategically refocusing your users and your base, to stay relevant, is going to be hugely important coming up.
It's an enormous challenge that we as a country have, right? We have the middle class, we have people that work in labor, and of course, we still need the labor class to grow it. And by the way, I mean, they are what made America what it is today. Every bridge, every road, every electrical line, they make the world run.
Yeah.
When we talk about AI energy consumption, where does that come from? That comes from these big energy plants and production. And so, again, it's two sides of the same coin. And I think there's definitely an opportunity for organized labor to play a big role in the training and education and the next phase of work in America. And a lot of organizations are already doing a great job of setting themselves up to be and to position themselves to really be that education and training center, as they should. They've done a great job over the last 200 years of training the workers that that have built American infrastructure. So I think it's a natural fit. And I'm a huge supporter of that training and education model being sort of held in the space of labor.
Yeah, we always hear it talked about, but we don't always see the output of that, so that's really fantastic. Well, I think if you have a not-for-profit or you're starting a union or whatever, I think this is a great place to start because there's having been on nonprofit boards and things like that, there's so much that you don't think of, that you can't imagine, that needs to get taken care of. And like having that all kind of in one-stop shop, I can imagine is extraordinarily valuable. So I think it's very cool what you're doing. I think you're helping a really interesting segment of the economy. And I just want to say thanks so much for coming on and sharing it with us. It's very cool.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. It's been a great conversation.
Thanks for watching. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. And if you could, give us a like, think about subscribing, and share this with your friends and any nonprofit out there that that needs some organization. And I will see you in the next one.